Movement is one of the most fundamental things you do in gaming. It gets you from one point to another, which is usually not something we think about as players. But after so many clips of what people are doing over in Apex, one can quickly find out that it isn't about just getting there, it's about how you get there. But how do we get to this level in Overwatch? Well, you first have to understand why movement is important in the game first. As opposed to other games, Overwatch characters move at a relatively fast speed, especially when paired along with a Lucio, and how you move does not affect where the bullet is going to go. So movement is a big determinant in keeping you alive for longer, as there is a high chance that with good movement, you will make your opponents miss shots, allowing you to win more duels. This all starts from observing yourself from the third person. Before we truly delve into the guide though, you have to avoid a few bad habits, the first being jumping. Now before you go into the comments and roast me about this one, yes, I jump a lot. No, it is not a good thing, but it is a hard habit to break. Let me explain. Jumping in most situations is a very bad thing to do because from the enemy's perspective, your movement is very predictable when on the ground. Once you jump, due to gravity, you have to come back down eventually, making an arc that is much easier to understand your next move. Contrast this with when you have both feet on the ground. Your next move could be a strafe to the right or to the left, but it could also include a crouch at a weird time to throw them off. With both feet on the ground, you have more options, which we will discuss later on. My jumping habit is so bad that one of my old coaches made me unbind it for a week of scrims. That is how important this is. The next thing you have to understand is that in Overwatch, all characters actually move slightly faster in the direction they are looking compared to going backwards. This could be helpful when trying to run away from people and is something a lot of people don't actually know. Now with the bad habits out of the way though, let's begin our movement training. The first step if you are completely new to movement is to take a second and think about what the enemy sees. This is something that really conceptualizes things for you during the game. If the enemy team has a Widowmaker, you have to think about where she is looking, and how you are going to avoid her shots. Yes, you could sit behind a wall, but what if you don't always have that option? By thinking ahead about this situation, you can understand that you will definitely never want to walk in straight lines without a shield, but you also don't want to stand still or scope in against her either on a character like Ana, for example, as this will be an easy way to get killed. Instead, you want to continue moving around different areas of cover until you can close the distance or put the Widowmaker in an uncomfortable position that is favorable for you. So make sure that you don't walk in a straight line forever and you think about how the enemy sees your movement. Moving on, it is important that you actually learn how to properly strafe. Strafing is a skill that is different in every game because they all usually have different allotted strafe speeds. As you can see on screen, if you spam A and D too fast, it barely moves your character at all, meaning you are going faster than the game's ideal strafe speed. Even though Overwatch has a pretty fast speed, it is important you learn it early on in your practice. This is why using this code to go into third person is really important. Don't add any crouches, but go on your character of choice and learn the fastest speed to get comfortable with it. This might take time, so don't get too impatient. It will be worth the effort. Slow down the video if you need to. Now, while you can strafe extremely fast in this game, sometimes it's counterintuitive. The way you strafe makes you harder to hit against different styles of aim. For example, you typically want to strafe faster against characters like Cassidy, Widowmaker, or Ashe because they all use aim styles that are flickier, while you want to have longer strafes against characters like Soldier, Tracer, and Zarya because they are characters that tend to want to track you. This is because if you strafe too fast, they won't have to move their mouse as much, making you an easy target. If you strafe too long against flickier characters, they will just wait for you to walk into their crosshair and delete you, almost as if you were walking in a straight line. This is another thing that takes time to learn. What type of aim does a character have? That is answered for you via a tier list on screen, and if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. Now let's learn how to incorporate crouching into the mix. Just like strafing, crouching too much or at the wrong time can actually hurt you, making you move slower and more predictably. The best way to use crouching is to do so sporadically throughout a 1v1, especially when you anticipate someone is about to take a shot, as it will force them to do a very quick micro adjustment in an incredibly short window of time. The problem is that if you do this too much throughout the course of the game, a good player will begin to recognize the patterns and anticipate when you are going to crouch. So work on your movement through time by incorporating crouches at random times. Concluding with our final tip, this one is going to blow your mind. Sometimes the best form of movement is not even moving at all. This is the case when you really need to focus on hitting your shots and know for certain that you are not being looked at by anyone. For example, if you are playing Soldier 76 and know that the enemy Lucio has his beat online, if no one is looking at you, it is plausible for you to stand still and try to track the Lucio as efficiently as possible to take his ultimate out of the fight. After all, it is much easier to land shots when you aren't strafing, and if you have no target you are strafing against, there is no need to do so. Keep in mind though that this is niche. This is when no one is looking at you, and sometimes you won't be aware of the Widow that is holding a Kefri angle a mile away from the fight, so be certain that there are no targets lurking for you and have a good reason to stop moving if you choose to do so. Movement is a skill that needs to be developed in every game that you play. In a lot of games, it is the one skill that sets apart the pros from your average Joe, and yet it is the most slept on by far. Take your time and take things one step at a time to make sure that you don't develop bad habits, and you are one step closer to becoming not only a better player in Overwatch, but gaming in general. If you are interested in using the code in the video for your own practice, it will be in the description. I hope this helps you all grasp the basics of movement in Overwatch, but until next time, I've got to peace out and Paz out. I'll see you in the next one.